Matthew Calbraith Peiyi was born in 1794. At that time, the child mortality rate in the white settler population of North America was pretty high. About 46% of children did not make it to their 5th birthday. This was mostly due to the highly contagious diseases of childhood, which included scarlet fever, diphtheria, diarrhea of infancy, and, oh, Johnny, I don't know what to do with that bloody cough you have, but maybe it has something to do with the infected scab on your knee. Maybe the best thing to do is amputate your leg. Whoops, maybe amputating your leg wasn't the best answer. So sorry, your cough still hasn't gone away. Peiyi and his 7 siblings all lived well past their 5th birthday, which was probably due to a lot of wealth and a lot of luck. Also maybe growing up in Rhode Island. Sea air really is good for your health. Anyway, the point is, it was highly likely for him to catch a highly contagious disease of childhood. One particularly severe outbreak of yellow fever in Philadelphia started due to the 1793 arrival of white French enslavers from Haiti who were fleeing the Haitian Revolution. So even on an already colonized territory, different colonizers brought even more disease. The 1793 outbreak started a series of yellow fever epidemics along the East Coast throughout the next few decades, any of which Peiyi could have encountered in his youth. By the way, when the white French enslavers arrived in Philadelphia, the city wanted them to quarantine for 2 weeks in case they carried diseases, but couldn't figure out a way to enforce it. I'm just thinking maybe a young Matthew Peiyi liked to take walks in the woods of Rhode Island, and a big rock could have just, fallen on top of him at any moment. So a young Peiyi is on a stroll in the woods, and he's like, oh, I'll take a nap here on this mossy green, because I treat everywhere I go like it's my personal backyard, and, this moose is also on a stroll, and just, squashes him like a bug. A young Peiyi is on a stroll in the woods, which he really should stop doing, by the way. It's clearly very dangerous, and he puts his hand on the remains of a splintered tree. And he's just hanging out, and then a rabbit runs out of the bushes and scares him, and he moves so suddenly that his hand just, yikes. Okay, a big splinter is very painful, but would that really kill him? He pulls out the splinter, and it's just like blood everywhere. Peiyi didn't actually spend most of his life in the woods. He spent it at sea. All the men in Peiyi's family were part of the Navy, and Peiyi himself joined at the age of 15. I don't know how well he swam, but I can't imagine it being very well. I mean, have you seen his face? This one almost really did happen. Peiyi was on the USS President during the War of 1812, and an opposing shot hit one of the ship's cannons, which then exploded and killed several men. Now, in reality, Peiyi was only injured, but this explosion could have killed him if he was just a few inches closer. If he didn't have all that luck, god damn it. Now, in that case, technically, he would have died by lack of luck. Now? Okay, okay. I thought cabin fever was exclusively afflicting those living on ships because of the 1996 musical adventure comedy Muppet Treasure Island. Well, in that the crew sings a song about how they all have cabin fever. The song is called Cabin Fever. Now, cabin fever can actually strike any person who's in an isolated or confined situation for a long period of time. But that includes people on Navy ships. Cabin fever is not a life-threatening disease itself, but those afflicted could be led to irrational decisions that could potentially threaten their life or the life of the group of people they are confined with, according to Wikipedia. I don't know what Perry's favorite food was, but it could have been shrimp. Nasty people really like shrimp. And shrimp can be deadly if you have an allergy, especially if it's an allergy you unknowingly develop later in life. Shark attacks are generally more common in the Atlantic Ocean, which is where Perry sailed for most of his time in the 1810s and 20s, particularly during the period where he was working under orders of the American Colonization Society. Now, if you hear that name and you think to yourself, boy, that sounds like a messed up society masquerading as abolitionists, but are still very, very racist, you would be right. Now, at this time, Perry was in command of the USS Shark, which is so ironic because he could have been killed by one. I do want to be clear. Sharks, like any animal, rarely attack unprovoked. But I don't know. I get the feeling sharks are generally anti-racist, and Perry's appearance in their waters on the way to Liberia was provocation enough. Or, you know, maybe a kraken attack is more realistic than a shark attack. Sure. In 1822, Perry was sent to physically claim Key West. This involved sailing to the island, taking an American flag, sticking it in the ground, and striking a pose. Obviously. But we all know the weather down there is unpredictable. Just checking. Any particular fire, or...? Yeah, sure. Oh, you know, I guess random fires happen all the time, but you know, for one to kill him, it must have been some fire. Hey! 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 Perry was a portly man with a hefty appetite for food and drink, mostly drink, but let's focus on the food for now. From 1845 to 1847, Perry fought in the Mexican-American War. He fought most of his battles on his gunships, but at least a few battles on land, and once he lands, he has to grab a bite somewhere, right? So, he takes one bite of food in Mexico and realizes how it tastes so much more amazing than any of the food he's ever had. Obviously, he's only had white people food so far, so... And Peiyi just keeps eating and eating and eating until... He also had to have been eating so much fish, right? How can he not die from mercury poisoning, right? No. Wait, again? Oh, already. I see. In 1852, U.S. President Millard Fillmore assigned Peiyi the mission to force Japan open to trade. The country had been closed to almost all Western countries for over 200 years. Peiyi then started collecting as much information about Japan as he could, studying what writings he could find on its defense patterns, its culture, its people, and maybe in that process he develops a strange kind of obsession. An obsession that just festers inside him, like this longing manifests as a poison inside him, this desire, it... Wait, I wasn't... Peiyi steps on this enormous rusty nail and he gets tetanus. He has a fingernail and just on a random whim decides not to cut ever, and the nail accidentally stabs him in the... A time portal opens and a pterodactyl just flies in at the exact right moment and just... Wait, down? No, up is way better. Wait, any particular kind or... Ew. Can you really die from... Oh, come on! Okay, so, just as Peiyi arrives in Japan, right before he lands, he slips on a banana peel and falls into a...
Hello. How are you?
I am Commodore Matthew Peiyi.
Are you Commodore Matthew Peiyi?
I am Commodore Matthew Peiyi.
Are you Commodore Matthew Peiyi, who fought in the War of 1812, thereby expanding of the American Empire further into indigenous peoples' lands?
I am Commodore Matthew Peiyi.
Are you Commodore Matthew Peiyi, who worked for the American Colonization Society, an organization that believed that formerly enslaved peoples should not live in the United States, thereby further preventing black liberation?
I am Commodore Matthew...
Commodore Matthew Peiyi, who claimed Key West for the United States, thereby refusing to acknowledge the people of the Culasa and Tequesta tribes, whose land it actually was.
I am Commodore Matthew...
Are you Commodore Matthew Peiyi, who fought in the Mexican-American War, thereby killing a large number of innocent Mexican civilians and even further expanding the American empire?
I am Commodore
Matthew Peiyi, who, with cannons and guns, with threat of invasion and attack, forcibly opened Japan to trade with the United States, thereby starting Japan's westernization and militarization?
I am Commodore Matthew Peiyi.
Thank you, Mr. Peiyi. As you have confirmed your identity, this conversation will now proceed to kill you. Through this conversation, you will realize all the different ways you have contributed to white supremacy, mass death, and cultural erasure. All the different ways you have harmed communities who continue to be oppressed by the American empire, all the different ways in which your life embodied colonization. This realization, the insurmountable amount of guilt and despair and anger and anguish, the pain that you feel about all the different lives you've destroyed, it will kill you, it will eat you alive. It will literally eat you alive.
I'm feeling the pain. But you said it literally eats him alive. Even though you said literally? Yeah, sure.
This realization, the insurmountable amount of guilt and despair and anger and anguish, the pain that you feel about all the different lives you've destroyed, it will kill you, it will eat you alive. It will literally eat you alive.
Well, I'm not, because I'm an actor. So, you want a realistic performance of the pain of remorse. Okay.
And anguish, the pain that you feel about all the different lives you've destroyed, it will kill you, it will eat you alive. It will literally eat you alive.
Would he, though? Yes, I would, but I'm not Matthew Peiyi. Wow. And no, I'm just saying, Commodore Matthew Peiyi, not the actor, had options. And of all the different options, he chose a life path where he agreed to murder and threaten people, take land on behalf of America. I think he understood what he was doing. He just didn't have the capacity to care. So to realistically portray him for feeling pain, or portraying him as feeling pain for causing pain. And that's impossible. That's a lot of pressure to put on yourself for a 17-page YouTube theater thingy. And also, you already invoked a man's death 29 times. I think it's pretty violent. Fictionally killing a nasty colonizer who's, already long gone is very different from threatening an entire country with giant gunboats to change its way of existing just for monetary and cultural exploitation. Yes, he did a boatload of bad business, but the opening of Japan was the big one. Yeah, gee, I wonder who they learned to be colonizers from. Look, I don't want to play a what's worse game. I said opening Japan was the big one because it's the one that affected you the most. And of all the many, he's the one whose legacy directly impacted you. Why are you trying to minimize that? And take back the power. Take back the space, take up all the space and power. That's really fair. If catharsis is what you want, maybe you should kill him by gun. I mean, most of the deaths you mentioned are accidental or circumstantial, except for the animals. Wait, because whales are majestic and peaceful. I got it. But guns are intentional. And it'd be quick and simple, and it would use his own tool against him. Okay. Then, what do you want to do now? You could have. But being lost at sea doesn't necessarily mean death. He could have just lost his way. Sometimes when people say lost at sea, they just mean vanish.
Growing up, my parents would take me to Japan once a year, and I would spend one whole week with my extended family at this one inn by this one beach. I always had a hard time enjoying that week, mostly because I was a huge brat. I complained that it took way too long to get there. I said that the inn was crusty, that the beach was dirty. I mean, the beach was dirty. I would get a splinter or a cut from broken glass every time I would walk on it. But I also had a hard time because I was spending time with these strangers, or people who felt like strangers, even though I understood that they were my family. I mean, I only saw them once a year. They were family. They knew each other. But I was just also there, invading their Because of this experience, I used to think that I really hated the beach and all ocean or sea related things, but now all I do is crave the sea, or rather just the smell of the sea. I'm looking for it everywhere I go, even when I'm somewhere landlocked. I look for the nearest aquarium or fish market. I understand now that it is an immense privilege to have a strong connection to your heritage, to have grown up with experience in two different countries, but it was really hard to appreciate that then when I was growing up, because I'd feel like a stranger in my own family, and then I would come home and be told all the different ways that I didn't belong here in this country either. Sometimes I think that I'm always looking for the smell of the sea because I'm trying to go back to those once-a-year weeks and tell my younger self, appreciate this. Really appreciate this. Then maybe you will stay in Japanese school and learn all the kanji. And maybe you will not beg your mom to change your lunch or speak English in front of your friends. And maybe you won't spend hours staring at the mirror wondering why you weren't born with a normal nose or normal eyes. And maybe you wouldn't have to learn how to make an origami whale for this piece because you would have already learned. And you would have remembered. Or maybe, I'm always looking for sea air because sea air is just really good for your health.